Welcome back to The Real Deal, everybody. This is a real deal on politics. All the current issues, economics, politics, history, whatever it is. Well, history, that's dead and gone, but we may talk about it anyway. This is very relevant to what may be happening in our times today. You can see over here I have a guest today. This is Mark Ellmore. Good to have you on the show.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Mr. Ellmore. Mark is running for Congress in the 8th District, is it?
Right.
Against a man named Jim Moran, who you probably know a lot better. He's been there for many years. And what do you have to say for yourself, Mark?
Well, first, I just want to thank you for allowing me to be here and just giving me a chance to state my case as why I believe I'm the right person to continue on and to serve this country. I think that my model and my views and visions for what we need to do, especially as a member of Congress, with their approval rating just going through the roof at 9%. Somebody's got to do something.
It's gone underneath the floor by now.
It's unbelievable, and that people sanction mediocrity and incompetence, and then they wonder, well, wait, how did we get to this situation we're in today? So I just hope with a common sense approach and more of a fair and balanced set of views, we can get to the right point here.
Right. That brings up a good point. I think. Why do you think Congress approval rating is so low right now?
Well, it's results. I mean, if you were on your job and everything that you touched went, down the drain, I think that, people are just disgusted. They want people to be held accountable, and no one in Congress. I mean, when you look at members of Congress and you say, hey, are you really doing your job? Most people would say, no. I don't think Jim Moran's done enough. I think that the whole Congress is just upside down because you can look and see through an inability to put any type of restrictions in place or any type of oversight in place. The financial markets are upside down. The housing industry went crazy because of a lack of responsibility there. And just take a look at what's going on in Congress. Jim Moran and the others want to go back and say, oh, by the way, George Bush is completely responsible for everything that's going on. And I tell people when I'm out on the street, I don't want to talk about George Bush or Jimmy Carter or George Washington for that matter. I want to talk about what's going on today. And I want to talk about the fact that he simply hasn't done enough, and that Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats have had the reins now. We're coming up on 2 years of that. And there's no evidence of doing anything. And just partisan politics, bickering, nothing can get done. They throw a bailout bill on us. She didn't even have the votes to get it passed. And she brought that to, that's unbelievable. And then that's really what kicked off that whole chaotic mess. And then the Senate came along and they decided to drop another $150 billion on top of it. And that's the cringe factor right there. Yeah, it was bad enough as it was.
It was really bad. And I understand that Pelosi, I watched her come out and right before they were going to pass this bill, and it's like she gave a speech for I don't know how long that was basically just Republican bashing.
Right.
And I was wondering if she was meaningly trying to sabotage the bill, or if she, or if she really thought she was going to get bipartisan support with that speech. But
no, again, politicians are no different than anybody else in business. They're not perfect people. And I would just say Nancy Pelosi made a huge error in judgment by coming out and railing on Bush. See, it's not good enough to just say, hey, by the way, we're trying to put together a rescue package to save America. We're trying to do the right thing to save our equity markets. No, she absolutely went out and attacked President Bush and basically the entire Republican Party and threw it on their lap. So I would say that's part of the problem, is that, again, it's not, it's not a Democrat or Republican issue. Taking care of people. I'm out talking to people every day and they want to say, well, what about whether it's health care or transport? Those are not Democrat or Republican issues. Those are people issues. Talking about pork barrel spending or taxing people, those are the ones where we kind of switch sides of the street and say, okay, well, I would have a more conservative approach or a more liberal approach, and then these are the results of each set of policies. So. But to try and politicize something like this, like a collapse, and blame somebody when it all got its genesis under the Clinton administration.
What is wrong with our economy right now, Mark?
It's the direct result of corporate greed, a lack of oversight in Congress. Obviously, greed is what really fuels a capitalist society here. But we've lost all standards of decency in this country. Just everybody is out to make a quick buck. We saw it in the dot-com boom years ago, where everybody went from being a passive bystander to all of a sudden, now they're day traders. And everybody's going online and trading stocks, and they had no business doing that. And what they did was Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in the late 90s through the Community Reinvestment Act kind of started this downhill slide. In other words, they started making it mandatory for banks to make loans in areas, which I support, making, revitalization plans. But when you start giving loans to people who couldn't or shouldn't be homeowners. I mean, there's a reason why. And when you relax the credit score guidelines, when you relax the down payment guidelines and make it so you don't even need a down payment, we've got working families out there, and especially some of our seniors, there was never any of that. And we've just decided that in this society, you can go and make $35,000 a year and buy a $60,000 car. That makes no sense at all, and then lease it, and you end up with nothing at the end of the lease but another payment. And so it's a microwave society we live in, and I just think that the chickens have come home to roost, so to speak, that we're just now seeing the result of a run-and-gun environment that we started back in the 90s.
All right, and that's caused what many think is a knee-jerk reaction by the government with this whole bailout rescue plan. What is this bailout rescue plan all about, and is it going to work?
Well, I originally, when the proposal came out, obviously took a deep, hard look at this. I mean, this was no joke. When I talked to no less than 10 people in the financial industry, I mean, I checked with people who would, some people would say, oh, well, you know what, they're Democrats. I checked with people that are libertarian. I checked with people who are Republicans and independents and hardcore conservatives. I couldn't find anybody, including the people I talked to from the Heritage Foundation, and listening to Newt Gingrich, as well as our presidential candidate, John McCain, say, oh, you know what, wow, we are about to push the panic button. So it was designed to make it so we could get an infusion of cash back in the system so that we can begin to open up the ability to lend money again. Because again, when you look at what happened, if you had a home equity line of credit, let's say that your house was worth $500,000 in this market, and that you owed maybe $200,000 on your first trust, and you said, you know what, I'm going to get a college loan, maybe a $100,000 line of credit. I've got some college stuff. I'll maybe want to pay off my car or whatever. You have the right to do that and to use that equity. Well, if you had a $300,000 total indebtedness, that $100,000 line of credit, if you paid that down, they were coming back in banks and lowering your line of credit arbitrarily without even asking you, hey, do you want it lowered? Credit card limits, etc. Because there's just that tight of a squeeze. Businesses can't borrow money. Banks won't loan to other banks because they don't know if they're going to be around tomorrow. So it created such a crunch in our equity markets and in the financial industries. They said, you know what, we need to eliminate all the bad debt. And I said, well, you know what, looking at that if these criminals that run these companies in the ground, I don't want them to get a penny. They're going to give them, I believe, in this provision, close to $400,000 as a maximum to anybody, the head of AIG or any of these other companies. I say nothing. If there are taxpayer dollars involved, you get nothing. Maybe you leave the office with a company coffee cup. That's it. But to take taxpayer money, I find that absolutely unbelievable. And, you just can't stand back and say, hey, we're going to take advantage of hard-working families. Right. And I just hope and pray that this thing comes back and that we're able to sell some of these securities in the future, these mortgage-backed securities or the notes themselves in the future at a premium. But it's going to be a while. I mean, we have created a complete wreck in our housing market here.
And